food is more than just things that we put in our mouth. Food became a real issue for me because I was in pain every time I ate. One of the things that happens in the whole low-fat movement, probably back in the 90s when it started, there was this big demonizing about fat. So a lot of foods were produced which said low fat, but actually had more sugar and more salt to give them flavour. Diet drinks are doing a big disservice. I think they trick the body into thinking it's receiving food when it's not. We can end up with a state where we're kind of overfed but undernourished. When we're thinking about healthy food, and certainly when I'm thinking about healthy food, I'm thinking about what am I going to put into my body that's going to support my microbiome. So any diet food I would remove. Anything that says low fat, low sugar.
Welcome to another episode of Life Coach Code. Today I have something extraordinary for you, something that you don't want to miss. This November, we are organizing a summit. It's called the Superhuman Summit, and it's from 11th till 14th of November. It's a 4-day virtual event that will take you from a regular human and transform you into a superhuman. How we are doing this? We're focusing on the 4 fundamental pillars of a human being: the spirit, the mind, the body, and the heart. And each day, we are diving into one of these pillars. We believe and we know that in each of these 4 fundamental pillars, there is a hidden superpower. And through these 4 days, we will help you uncover it, embrace it, and learn how to harness it so you become a superhuman. So if you want to get your 4-day pass, you can find the link in the description, or you can go to lifecoachcode.com/superhuman summit and you can get the tickets there. Again, this is an event that you will not want to miss. There will be over 25 coaches and experts, over 12 workshops, panels, a place so you can network with like-minded individuals, and a lot of free gifts that the coaches will give to you. So this being said, there is no logical reason for you not to go and check the tickets, because you will discover that the most extraordinary thing about this event is the price itself. It's for less than one meal. For the cost of less than one meal, you get 4 days of transformation with over 25 coaches. So grab your tickets today. I'm excited, actually. We are organizing the summit. We are the most excited to hear all the coaches, to hear all the talks that we organize for them, and to see all the workshops, to do the work, and to see what comes out of it. So grab your tickets, go to the link in the description, or go to lifecoachcode.com/superhuman summit and see you in there. Today I have a special guest. Her name is Emma Skilton, and she is one of the coaches that will talk on the summit. She is a health expert, food expert, and a gut expert, I must say. So Emma Skilton, she is the founder of She's Got Guts, and she offers coaching for female entrepreneurs seeking greater health and vitality. With over 15 years of experience, Emma empowers women to regain their confidence and live fulfilling lives. Her holistic approach combines emotional coaching, nutritional therapy, and the science of well-being. So thank you, Emma, for being part of this summit, and thank you for coming on this podcast. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm really excited to talk to you, and I'm going to jump right into it and ask you the first question that might be a simple question at first, but it's actually a little bit more complex as you start to think about it. What is food really, in your words?
I think of food as a number of things. So food, firstly, is sustenance. So some people just feel food is just fuel, but I feel it's more sustenance for our body, which can bring pleasure. It can be really sociable, and it can be a way of connecting as well. So it could be that you're preparing food together that you're going to eat. So I feel like food is more than just things that we put in our mouth, if that makes sense. And it's really important to me that we find food that sustain us, that we can share with others, that we all enjoy, so that it can be a sociable occasion as well.
So there is a lot of theories, and a lot of people say different things about food. Some people say that food is just fuel. Other people say that food is actually information that you're putting in your body, and the type of information you put, that's the type of body you're gonna develop. There is a famous saying, what you eat, you become. So what is your take on this?
I think there's something to be said in that, because for my own experience of years ago healing myself from an illness after traveling in my 20s, food became a real issue for me because I was in pain every time I ate. And so it wasn't pleasure, and I was hungry, but I dreaded what the next meal, that what am I going to eat? And through the help at the time with my acupuncturist, who explained what was going on in my body, I started to look at food differently. And there were certainly some foods that I didn't eat at the time, and I had to cook differently. And I only had I didn't have any raw food at the time, that was too abrasive for my guts. But I learned to really look at pure foods, unprocessed foods. So I just ate cooked vegetables, cooked fruits. At the time, I wasn't having any wheat or any dairy or any sugar. So it was quite extreme for a short period of time. But in that short period of time, I healed, and then I could eat really whatever I wanted again after that. So I think we can use food to heal. We can use food in the wrong way, which can actually harm us. So one of my concerns is that in our current society, there is so much ultra processed food, or foods that are sold as healthy foods, or foods aimed at children, that are really not that great for us. And so I like to strip it back to just using pure ingredients. So fruit, vegetables, as they came off the tree, out of the ground or out of the sea. That is my starting point. And then creating lovely, tasty meals that not only do I want to eat for myself, but I want to be able to share with other people, and they will enjoy them as well.
So, what will you say that is the biggest problem, the worst food we eat in the modern society? If you can take one food and just remove it out of the diet of people, what will that food be?
I'd probably say Diet Coke.
That
It's not food, is it? But I think diet drinks are doing a big disservice. I think they trick the body into thinking it's receiving food when it's not. So any diet food I would remove. Anything that says low fat, low sugar.
And why is that? Is it because there is something that they add in these foods that is harmful, or is it the fact that it doesn't have sugar inside? Why the diet itself is bad?
Well, I think one of the things that happens, and in the whole low fat movement, probably back in the 90s when it started, there was this big demonizing about fat. So a lot of foods were produced which said low fat, but actually they had more sugar and more salt to give them flavor. So unwittingly, people thought they could eat more because it was low fat, but they were getting a high amount of sugar and salt in their diet that they wouldn't normally have had. And we know that if we're unbalancing our blood glucose levels, that's not great for us. So firstly, I would say, we don't want these foods that are artificially produced, that in a way I feel they've been interfered with. It's not how you would naturally make a cake. It would have sugar. If you're going to eat cake and make a cake, make it at home with proper ingredients, with wholemeal flour, lovely brown sugar, eggs, butter. Even butter could be called a processed food, but it's minimally processed. Even making a cake, you've processed the ingredients for an outcome, but you haven't added lots of preservatives, emulsifiers, artificial additives. It's pure ingredients to create a lovely, tasty cake. And even those could be done in a way that is better for us than going out and buying a factory-made, pre-made cake.
That is actually my next question. What is processed actually? We call processed food is bad. We should avoid processed food. But what in the word processed is the thing that we should avoid? Because when we cook at home, we are in a way processing the food, right? So what is the wrong thing with processed?
Yes, and I would say it's an area that we need to be careful around, because as soon as you do something to an ingredient, you have processed it. Flour is processed from the wheat. What I suppose I'm really getting at is those ultra processed foods. So they would be foods that probably have been reformed, for example, to look like a chicken, but it doesn't really have many ingredients. It could have started out as soya, and now it's selling itself as a chicken nugget. That's ultra processed, that I feel has very little fiber, very little nutrition left, because the more you mill and process and chop and change, then a lot of those vital vitamins and minerals get depleted along the way. And so we can end up with a state where we're kind of overfed but undernourished. So if you want to eat chicken, just get the bird. That's part of the bird. Don't go and basically, if you looked on the packet, it would just say chicken. Whereas if you looked on the back of a processed piece of meat, it's going to have probably 10 or 15 other ingredients that you don't even know what they are. So that's what I would say when we want to avoid processed, or I should say ultra processed foods. Any ingredient that you wouldn't have found in your grandma's store cupboard, it probably shouldn't be in there. And a lot of the research, it's only coming out now. So when I mention emulsifiers have been linked to IBD, and particularly people with Crohn's. I just found a scientific report that I was reading a couple of weeks ago and looking at that, and it's just things like that those sorts of ingredients are in lots of different foods that we eat daily. Mayonnaise, it helps keep the consistency, it stops it from splitting, gives a longer shelf life. So it's understandable why manufacturers want to use these ingredients, because we want products that are stable, that will last more than a couple of days. Whereas years ago, if you make a homemade mayonnaise, you really need to eat it within a couple of days. It can't stay in your fridge for 3 weeks. So, it's understandable why some of those ingredients would be in there in the first place, but I don't think we fully understand the full extent long term of the implications of what they're doing to our body, specifically our gut health.
Yeah, so basically avoid foods that have these emulsifiers are the little E's on the back of the food, right? E and the number, like E100 something.
Yes.
These are actually the chemicals that they use to make the food for mass societies, because let's be honest, like we cannot produce food in a massive amounts to feed whole cities and think that this food is natural, because it's simply not possible. First of all, how we source this food is not natural, it's not humane. We need to keep animals in certain places and grow them just for the food, and then take this food, and of course we need to add something in this food so it can stay a longer period of time, so it can survive the transportation, it can survive in the store, and then when we take it at home, it can survive in our fridge. So these things that they're putting in the food, also certain foods, of course, we know that oil and water do not mix, so we need to put something to be a mediator between, so they can mix and we can produce a new food and to make the food more tasty. So all of these things, marketing things that are making us buy the foods, are actually the things that are induced in the food and that are the bad things in the processed. Am I right?
Yeah, they're very, very cleverly designed and made to make us want to eat them and want to eat more. It's very, very interesting, and I've recently been looking into the effects of ultra processed food, and when you think about how many cases of obesity and diabetes there are in the world right now, there is, I would say, really a correlation between ultra processed foods and those common modern day diseases. And I can't say that you can blame people specifically, because the way those foods are designed, as I say, that the taste in the mouth, the flavors, they leave you wanting more. There's certain brands of potato chips that, one's never enough kind of thing. Well, they're designed that way specifically. And but it's having that awareness. So I wouldn't say, oh, never ever eat it, because sometimes we want some of these things that we perhaps know aren't the best for us, but actually we enjoy it. But if the majority of the time we are working towards eating pure unprocessed foods that have used ingredients that are minimally processed, then that is going to be better for us.
That's really interesting what you said, that we shouldn't be so much diabolic and avoid all the time all the processed foods. From time to time, you can eat something, it's not a big deal. And I believe a lot of people are falling into this trap of black and white thinking, either I'm eating or I should stop eating at all and not eat ever again. And they're creating more problems for them, or making this whole eating thing problem and something to weigh on them. It's like a torture. They obsess themselves with not doing certain thing, and that by itself is a problem. They're not actually enjoying this whole experience of making food and eating. They're avoiding. It's like they're hiding from the demons of the food, and they're trying to avoid them at all the costs and all the time. So what is your maybe formula for keeping a healthy balance, or maybe a mindset that you want to share that people can adopt, so it helps them actually approach this whole problem with processed foods and healthy foods, and making their own healthy diet in a much healthier way?
Yes, and I think it's one step at a time. So it depends on your starting point. So I think it's being mindful about what we eat, how we eat. And as you said, some people, it's almost people can become polarized or use food almost as a way of controlling. And I don't see that as being particularly healthy. I think, like exactly what you said, you know, we don't want to be going to extremes, because I don't think that's helpful either. And, you know, some people find buying really pure, unadulterated foods quite expensive. So, you know, organic meat we know is more expensive, organic fruit and vegetables is more expensive. So if you're on a lower income, that could feel out of people's reach sometimes. So it's trying to get that balance between what we decide that we can't do without and what actually we could compromise on and know that we're working towards. So even if it's just that we'll add some natural yogurt, unsweetened yogurt, and maybe we'll have a few more organic vegetables, but it doesn't all have to be organic. So we're just introducing and noticing those little changes. And one of the things I do in my free group is I regularly run sugar-free challenges, because sugar seems to be the thing that if people can wean themselves off sugar first, so many other things change, because a lot of the foods that have got the sugar in are the highly processed foods. So they're automatically cutting them out just by reducing their sugar, or even if they gave up sugar for a week, their taste buds change, and then they start making different choices. So yes, they can still have chocolate, but maybe they then decide, well, actually, I'm going to have the dark 70% chocolate that's better for my gut, not the sort of mega milky bar with loads of caramel added. So there's changes that we can make that are what I would say healthier choices, but not feeling like we're being dictated to that, oh, I must never eat that, or I can only eat this. I think that becomes easily, if we're not careful, it could become a real issue of seeing people, even in the most extreme cases, maybe becoming anorexic or bulimic. And we don't want to start these problems. We could just be creating another problem. So we have to start with the individual, and I also believe that there isn't really a one perfect diet for everybody. I think we have to work with the individual and see their start point and what their outcome is that they're looking to gain.
Yeah, I agree. And there are a lot of diets. There are like veganism, carnivore diet, keto diet, and it seems that people are approaching these diets with a certain ego, let's say. Some people that will eat vegan diet, they will eat just because they feel better than people who are eating meat. Or people who will eat keto diet, they feel that they're superior to people who don't. So there is a lot of debate, like what's the best diet, and people are actually missing the bigger picture, that the diet itself, there is no perfect diet, that each of us has certain universal requirements for nutrients, but also certain personal requirements. And each diet has your benefits and it has its flaws. So you should find the diet that the benefits you need and the flaws you can tolerate, because there is no perfect diet. And putting a label on what you eat is just creating more, I don't know how to say, it's creating an ego element into the eating itself. Like just because I'm not eating meat, I'm not superior than other people. And people are feeling like this, that they're superior just because they don't, and they're blaming people who eat meat about the environment, that they're maybe polluting or killing animals or etc. So the thing is, there are a lot of diets in the world, and it seems that every day they make new one, and then after 1 month they say, oh, that diet is bad, this one is better. Then they make one, then they say, oh no, this one is good, that one is worse. And people who will follow the trend will get confused eventually in a few months. They will be like, I started this, now I start this, now this is bad, now this. So I just want to ask you, let's simplify this thing and let's tell people what are the fundamental like principles of food, what are the foods that you must have at home, and from there they can just build up their own diet.
Yes, so I would say I totally agree with what you've just said there, by the way. I have met people who come across as though they feel that they're superior because they've started to eat a certain way. I don't think that's the majority. I do think that's the minority, but I think there's a danger with different diets and also what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. So that's another probably why the diet industry is so multi-billion industry, is that low fat might work for one person, low carb might work for another, but that's not a long-term way to eat. And even with the gut reset programs that I run, they are maximum 30 days, and then you reintroduce foods. So you are restricting yourself for a short period of time, but the idea is that it's not forever. So I would say, from answering your question just now, what we should be focusing on the most is more vegetables, so variety, lots of different colors. So plant-based doesn't mean you have to be vegan. Plant-based means you're eating lots of fresh fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, herbs. And if you could get 30 different colors, 30 different types into your diet every week, you would be having a really good variety, and you'd be getting more fiber, more different ranges of vitamins and minerals. So I would say, if you were looking at your dinner plate, half of that plate, you would want that as fresh plant-based ingredients. If you eat meat or fish, then about a palm-sized amount of pure protein. So if you didn't eat meat or fish, maybe that would be tofu or tempeh or something similar, and a small amount of healthy fat. So I would say a cold pressed oil, so olive oils are the obvious example there. About a tablespoon is not too much. And then on the side of the grains, we want whole grains, so brown rice over white rice, whole wheat pasta over white pasta, whole wheat bread rather than white bread, and with bread, the traditional sourdough type method of producing bread. And again, that only needs to be a small amount on the plate, maybe, again, a handful, rather than what we often see is a pile of pasta with a small amount of vegetable sauce. I would want the pile of the vegetable sauce with a small amount of pasta. So you've got a little bit of everything there, but it's the ratios that we want to look at. Is that, are we eating too much protein sometimes, where that could be replaced with beans and lentils, which are great protein, more fiber. So it's thinking about your daily plate maybe in a slightly different way.
So what is your opinion on fat? There is we say healthy fat, unhealthy fat. What is your opinion on fat, and why people got the idea that fat is bad for us?
I think there are certain fats, like trans fats, that have been sort of, I would say, kind of things like palm oil are not great for us. I think there was a really good campaign against fat, as I was mentioning earlier. And then, it's now we're realizing, actually, maybe that wasn't so great after all. Maybe it was the sugar that wasn't so great for us. So as you were saying, there's these sort of trends that go around that, oh, no, you can eat fat after all, but now you can't eat sugar, or now you can't eat carbs. In reality, a little bit of most things is not bad for us. It's the extremes. And so cold pressed oils like olive oil have been shown to be really beneficial. Foods rich in omega fats, so they're really great for us. And it's just those saturated fats that people are afraid of for heart health and cholesterol, but actually that's not all fats. So it's just learning to break down what is considered a bad fat and not such a bad fat is what I would say. So I think around that is that, again, in the ultra processed foods, a lot of those fats have been hydrogenated to give them a longer shelf life. A lot of the goodness is not really in them anymore, and at high heats they can become toxic. So again, it's sort of going back to those unprocessed. So if you're eating coconut oil, you're eating it solid. If you're eating olive oil, you want the cold pressed, because that's the first pressing from the olive. So you get all those goodness, all the vitamins and the minerals in the olive come out in that first pressing. Each time that they then redo it and redo it and redo it, it's still olive oil, but it's got less of those active ingredients in. So it's not going to do harm as such, but you're not going to get such great benefit from using the oil.
So would you say that butter is the healthiest oil basically to cook with?
I do use a little bit of butter, but I still tend to use olive oil or even a cold pressed rapeseed oil. It's got high omega-3 and 6, but you want those typically the more expensive. So if it's a cold pressed oil, then it hasn't had heat to take all the oil out of the seeds. So they're going to be better for you. And again, rapeseed is more stable at high heat, but generally I only use olive oil at home and a little bit of coconut oil and a small amount of butter, because butter tastes great. I just don't slather it all over everything. So again, it's sort of small amounts, and I do try and have organic, because we know that the way that most cows are reared is not in the most healthy environment. So if it's not out in the fields eating grass, if it's being fed synthetic foods and pumped full of hormones and antibiotics, then that's going into the milk, and I don't really want to be drinking that.
Yeah, a lot of people from where I come from, like in my culture, they cook with animal fat. And cooking with animal fat, like from my grandma, I know that she was saying that it's the healthiest thing. So what is your opinion on this? Was she right, or is animal fat these days, was there any research about animal fat that is not?
Well, I'd certainly use lard over margarine, because lard is it's a byproduct of your meat, and it's a great fat to cook with. Goose fat for roast potatoes, we know, is absolutely amazing. I'd certainly use that over a factory produced margarine, absolutely, or a synthetic trying to look like butter. I would certainly have traditional butter over anything that's come in a plastic pot out of a factory. So yes, and again, it's, you know, using lard, you're not slathering. Well, actually, my granddad used to give us dripping on toast. That was a great delicacy from the Sunday roast. I don't think we should be afraid of that, but as I say, we're not going to be eating it by the tablespoon. So it's about balance, isn't it?
So,
and I think, again, with a lot of these processed foods, they're using margarines and hydrogenated oils. So baked goods that you would buy in most bakeries, you know, if you're eating a lot of them, you are getting more of the unhealthy fats that perhaps you realize, because they're just part of the everyday ingredients. So again, if you're making things at home, you know what's going into your food. You have control over how much you're having.
Yeah, that's key. I want to speak a little bit about balance that you said, because there is a big debate in the world today about people who prefer to eat meat, people who say that eating red meat is the best eating. There are people who say that you shouldn't eat red meat because it's linked to certain diseases. So what is your opinion on red meat? So we will finish this section about food, and then we can talk about balance and how to actually approach this whole dilemma.
Yeah, we often have this debate. So I don't eat red meat. I don't like it. I do eat chicken and I do eat, so I eat poultry and I eat fish, and I love fish. My husband grew up in the Mediterranean. He's a big red meat fan, and I have certainly reduced the amount of red meat that he eats. And I would say, based on research that I've seen recently, which is probably written in 2020, so I would say pretty recent, we certainly probably eat too much red meat as a whole. When you think it's processed into burgers and it's used a lot in fast foods, maybe now and again eating a good juicy grass-fed steak it's not going to kill you. If you're eating that kind of food every day, then perhaps it's not so great. But certainly cold water fish, seafood, if you eat free range, preferably organic, chicken, but I wouldn't be wanting to eat it every day. I would still be focusing on more of my meals being based around those beans and lentils, vegetables and pulses, nuts and seeds, and still having some protein, but it's not essential.
Is it the red meat itself that's not so healthy, or is it the fact that it's processed and that is, who knows what they put inside of it when they are putting it in your burger? For example, eating McDonald's or this type of restaurants, fast food restaurants, they probably don't get their meat from a local farmer. So my question is the red meat as a red meat in itself not so healthy? Or is it the fact that we are overusing it and there is so much chemicals induced into it, into restaurants and everyday life, that we're getting this meat?
I think a lot of it is to do with the way it's produced. It has to affect the meat. If it's got hormones, antibiotics, I mean, certainly one of the meats that I would say really not to eat is pork, more than say, when you say red meat, I'm thinking beef, but actually pork is the one meat that, when we do the gut reset intent, is not allowed. And pork is probably the most processed of all the meats. So yeah, I mean, that's been shown with the nitrates that they put in ham and bacon, are linked to cancer. Pigs, we know most of them are not free range, are not organic, so they're produced in very unhygienic environments and inevitably end up having to have a lot of antibiotics, and that's in the meat, and that's going into our bodies. So I don't say people should never eat meat, because I don't like to be that kind of person, and I'm sure there's people who may have followed high protein diets and they eat a lot of meat and they feel really healthy on it because it might actually suit their body type. And if they've grown up in that culture where you eat a lot of meat, to suddenly stop can be a bit of a shock to the body. So I might sound like I'm sitting on the fence, but I don't like to be too prescriptive. I would still always say, if you want to eat meat, make it high quality meat, because actually, apart from the fact that you don't want the chemicals in your food, it's the welfare of the animals as well, isn't it? That, do you want to know that animals had a good life before it became your food? I do.
And okay, so I have one more question. Are there any differences between male and female diets? Like, because we know that the male and female biology is different. There are different hormones that should be produced. Is there any difference when you work with your clients that you're approaching them differently just because they're male or female?
That's a really interesting question. And I do feel like, looking at the way my husband and I metabolize food, our bodies are different. And that's where I feel like one diet doesn't fit all. And when I first met him 30 years ago, I was completely vegetarian. And I convinced him that being vegetarian was a really good idea. And it actually made him quite ill. So in that respect, I realized that there really isn't one prescriptive way to eat. You've got to work with the individual. And one of my starting points is a lifestyle analysis questionnaire that I do, and that highlights 9 systems in the body and how they're operating. And based on those results, then it helps me to look at what we need to focus on first nutritionally to support the body, because if one area is really struggling, then actually it's affecting all the others. So for example, if the digestive system is really struggling, then all the other systems will be under par. So it might be that we need to work with the digestion first, and it might be that raw food isn't the best thing for that particular person. So would always be looking at and tweaking suggestions based on that start point. And again, I think to generalize between, well, men eat this way and women eat that way, it's probably too simplistic, because we know there's so many nuances within that to do with lifestyle, genetics, just so many factors that will influence the way that food behaves in our body and how we utilize that as fuel. So I think I don't like to think of male and female as separate. I think it's actually down to individual.
That's really interesting. So I want to make it as simple as possible for people to just understand the principles of eating healthy and how food actually impacts your body and your health. So can you share with us what are how foods actually go when they go into your body, how they affect your system, how they affect your health? Because we're speaking about this subject, but we're all making it, we don't know what it means. We say like eat healthy food, food is affecting your health. How exactly food is affecting your health? You're eating something, food goes into your body. What happens?
Okay, so some examples that people might be aware of, especially because obviously my focus is on gut health, is that where you would, for example, eat some fermented food, so live yogurt or kimchi or sauerkraut are the obvious ones, maybe miso, they have an action on the body where they work together with the bacteria in your gut to help it proliferate, so that we're full of bacteria all the time and viruses and all sorts going around our body at all times. But if we're eating too much of the wrong food, then we're more prone to illness. And then if we have an illness, then the bacteria, especially if we've had to take, say, an antibiotic to heal us, then the gut is all out of balance and the unhealthy bacteria can proliferate, and then the healthy bacteria that we want in our body that helps the body function more effectively can be depleted. So when we're thinking about healthy food, and certainly when I'm thinking about healthy food, I'm thinking about what am I going to put into my body that's going to support my microbiome, that then helps support all the systems in my body. So thinking about having enough fiber through whole grains, fruits and vegetables. A lot of people don't get enough fiber. If they're eating a highly processed diet, there's very little fiber in that. Having protein, not just through traditional, what we might think of meat and two vegetables, but beans and pulses and lentils, nuts and seeds are all adding fiber that the gut bugs absolutely love. So as fresh as possible, because you're getting all the polyphenols, which is another technical word, but they're all these compounds that have been shown through years of different studies to benefit us in different ways. So it's quite complex, and without being too sciencey, because I think people just can go a bit glazed over and they're not really listening anymore. But they're all going towards to make energy and fuel in the body so that our brain functions and our muscles function. And ultimately, our gut is affecting all of that.
So to reconstruct it, you eat food, and the food itself contains certain nutrients that can either feed your healthy bacteria that's in your gut, or basically vote for the bad bacteria, because we all have a balance in our system with healthy and unhealthy bacteria, as you said. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that the healthy bacteria needs to dominate, it's the one that protects our immune system. Am I right till here?
Yes. So for example, a diet high in sugar is going to help proliferate the unhelpful bacteria.
Yeah. Okay. So
if you think of the goodies and the baddies love sugar. They love sugar. The goodies love fiber. They love so they're the two extremes.
So it's who you vote for. If you eat sugar, you vote for the bad guys. If you eat fiber, you vote for the good guys.
In a very simplistic way. It doesn't mean you can't ever have sugar, but because it's in so many of our foods, that in places that you wouldn't even expect, most of us are eating far more sugar than we actually realize, and that's at the crux of it. That's part of the. And as I said, yeah, I said earlier, it's like when you are choosing what you eat, you want to know that you're actually making an informed decision rather than thinking, oh, I'm eating that because they've told me it's good for me. But then when you look on the ingredients, you're like, whoa, hang on a minute, but it's got this, and that, and that's actually not that great. That doesn't need to be in there.
So when you feed your healthy bacteria, of course, you need to pay attention for the balance, right? Because it's not that you should get rid of all bad bacteria, right? There should be some balance between good and bad bacteria, bad as we say it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, everyone's is individual. That's it. It's all unique, which is quite incredible, isn't it? So there will be certain things. It could even be your environment that will affect your microbiome. It's not just what we eat. And that's why when I'm working with clients, I talk to them about, you know, even down to the skincare they're using, what they're using to clean around the home, how often are they getting out in nature, in fresh air. All these will have an influence. So we focus a lot on what we eat because that seems the obvious thing of going through our gut, but actually it's incredible just what we breathe in through, you know, our airways is affecting our microbiome as well. It's even down to, you know, in some people would believe the way we think. So the people around us can even affect our microbiome. It's the most fascinating subject.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm so passionate about this subject. Also, I want to ask you why they call the gut the second brain. How that links with the microbiome and all of these things.
This is a really interesting topic because probably many of us will think of times where we might have been really excited or we're nervous and we get sort of like butterflies in our stomach, and it takes that connection down to the stomach area rather than the head area. And there's been lots and lots of research of how important those messages that our body gets from the stomach, there's as many pathways as there is from our brain. And also when we're looking at mental health, actually many people with depression have a depleted gut flora. So when they can start to reintroduce the helpful bacteria, then often people's mood can be lifted and just general well-being. People can feel calmer. So I found in my experience working with people on the gut reset program, for example, a lot of people will come feeling out of control, high anxiety, a little bit on edge. And when they've replenished the gut, and part of it is a cleansing process and then a replenishing process, they often say they feel calmer, they're sleeping better, they don't feel so overwhelmed. So for me, that's a clear indication that by working on their gut and changing the way they're eating has affected their mental wellness as well.
Yeah, so let's conclude to here. So when we say eat healthy, it all boils down to the individual, to what you need for you to be healthy. There are, of course, certain universal principles, but there are also personal principles that you should keep in mind for yourself. So when you eat healthy, you're basically, when you're eating, you're voting for the good and the bad bacteria in your gut. And this is actually either going to make balance in your system or disbalance. So when you're eating, also you should consider the nutrients that you are taking, how you are feeding your body, because you're eating primarily to feed your body, not to feed yourself. The self is a construct of the mind, right? But that's why we are approaching taste. It's the priority for us when we choose food instead of the nutrients we get from the food, because we forgot that we are actually eating to feed our body, not our self. It's the taste is not the first place in the priority list. The nutrients are. So you should keep in mind the nutrients, keep in mind who you vote for when you eat. And with these principles in mind, you can construct your own diet that's healthy for you, that's away from any label. And of course, you should keep in mind about where this food is coming from. Is it diet or processed, and like avoid these things, but also not be too much extreme in not trying them ever again. However, what I noticed when you start eating healthier, you actually prefer healthy food over unhealthy food. It's something happens, some shift happens in your brain, that the foods that once were so delicious for you, the sugary foods, they start being too sugary for you or not that appealing. So as you said, when you think, I'm going to eat a chocolate, you are actually going for the 75% dark chocolate rather than just milk chocolate. So all of these things, all of these changes happen naturally when you start eating healthier naturally. So does this summary of eating healthy, like, do you agree with it, or will you add something on it?
Yeah, I think that the other thing is, don't get too hung up, because variety is key. So when I say that, it's like, don't feel that because we're told that broccoli is good for us, that you have to eat it every day. Or if you really don't like broccoli, there's so many other vegetables out there that you could have instead. So yeah, I think you summarized really well, and it is individual. I mean, I've done DNA testing with clients, and it's really fascinating what comes back in their genetic makeup of. And a good example was, my son and I were quite similar. My husband's came out really different, and just seeing that, the three of us having it done at the same time and starting to look through it and going, well, would they just say that anyway? Like, surely, you know, none of us should have sugar. But then foods that were great for me were not showing up as great for my husband. So it's like, well, then that clearly shows that one way of eating is not great for everybody. So it's learning to listen, actually, because when you're eating, I would say, pure unprocessed foods, your body, when you start to listen to your body, you sort of start to know what you need and what you want. You start to gravitate towards certain things, and you might eat a lot of carrots, say, for a few weeks, and then it's like, I don't feel like carrots anymore. But maybe your body needed something in that carrot that it was sort of topping itself up on, until it felt like, well, I've had enough now. So what do I need now? And they've done experiments back in the 20s with children that had been highly malnourished and had rickets. And they were like 4 years old, or probably even younger. And they just laid the table with, they could choose whatever they wanted. They weren't told what they had to eat. And as they followed this process, the children were picking on certain things that they needed until they didn't need it anymore. And then they wouldn't eat it. And then they'd go on to the next thing. And it was like they were managing their own needs without even knowing that's what they were doing. And there was one child in particular, cod liver oil was very good for rickets, and so they put a little cup of it on the table every day, and didn't tell him he had to have it. It was just there, available, and he would take it. He took it, and every day until his body didn't need it anymore. And I found that absolutely fascinating, because I think as adults we've been trained in certain ways of eating, and eating at certain times, and eating certain foods. Even eating things because we think they're good for us, and perhaps we don't actually need them at that particular time. And if we could get back to that point of really listening to what our body's asking us for, maybe we'd be more in tune, and we would eat what our body actually needs at that time. And overall, we would feel healthier, and maybe we'd eat less. Because I think a lot of people overeat because they're not getting the right nutrients in the right amounts. So they still feel hungry. Their body's still searching for that missing ingredient. But when they're balanced, they're satisfied, and they don't keep looking for food all the time.
You said it perfectly. I completely agree. There are certain times that when I was eating unhealthy, I know that, for example, when my body needed fat, I would first thought in my mind will be burger, right? But when you train your body, when you're eating healthy diet, then when you need fat, the first thing that will come to your mind might not be burger. It might be eggs or omelet or something that's healthier alternative. Just because you programmed your mind to look for this tiny thing ingredient that you might need in bad foods doesn't mean that you should eat those bad foods and that they will be healthy for you. If you just change the way you eat, the same thing you can find in different foods that are coming with a healthier other nutrients for your body instead of chemicals. So I want to ask you, because I know that our bodies have immense potential. That's part of why we are organizing this Superhuman Summit, why we have the whole day specialized for the body. And I know that when you're healthy and when your diet is optimized, when you feed yourself individually what you individually need and you're optimized individually, that a lot more energy and vitality and potential comes out of your body. So I want to ask you, in your opinion, let me ask you like this. Are there any foods that if you eat, you will feel like a superhuman, or is it a way of eating that if you adopt will make you feel like a superhuman?
Oh, now you've got me. I just think, what makes me feel superhuman? I love berries, raspberries, particularly blueberries.
But that's also individual, right? It's for you.
Yeah, for me, I love berries and I love nuts. So if I'm ever having a hungry moment, I will always go for nuts, and berries and seeds for me are my superfoods. I will put them with everything. And something we've really forgotten and I haven't mentioned, actually drinking enough water and staying hydrated. Just plain water. So ditch the sodas, ditch the squashes, just pure filtered water will do so much for concentration, energy, focus, vitality. It just, we are made up of water primarily. So it's something that often gets overlooked, that drinking enough water. So
how do you find your water? Where do you have? Is it from tap and then you filter it, or do you buy it from store? Do you buy it from a plastic bottle, or are you specific to not have this PFAS into the water? So you buy it in a glass bottle. So how do you source your water in today's world?
my water comes from my tap and goes into a filter jug, and I've got a glass filter jug. And because I find the water here in the UK tastes of chlorine, I really don't like the flavour. So filtered water for me is, yes. I don't like buying bottled water just because it's in a plastic bottle, and the whole recycling and also the potential of plastic BPA leakages into the water. It's not great. So I always try and keep, if I'm taking water out with me, either in a BPA free bottle or a glass bottle. Glass is difficult because it's not always practical. But yes, I have filtered water at home, and it makes me drink more, because even with a little, maybe a slice of lemon or a slice of lime or slice of orange is nice in water. If you're not a natural water drinker because it's boring, then add a slice of fruit, or even frozen. In the summer, I've used frozen fruit, so frozen pieces of pineapple instead of ice cubes is actually really nice in water. It just gives it a little edge, and makes it feel much more tasty.
Yeah, can you give us a glimpse of what you're going to talk about on the Superhuman Summit?
Well, what I want to talk about, in a way, is similar to today. Is just looking at the way we eat, how we can eat more unprocessed foods and not to be overwhelmed. So a lot of the people that I work with, they want to eat more healthy and they don't know where to start. I realize a lot of people don't actually know how to prepare meals. They've lost that ability to cook, and maybe they're just too busy, and so they've never given themselves the time. And then because they haven't been doing it, they've lost their confidence. So I really want to encourage people that they can eat really healthy, simple to prepare, easy meals, and that can be an enjoyable experience. And actually, for me also, it's about some self-care and some self-love, and just slowing down a little bit, because I feel we're in a world where we're always rushing around. For a lot of people, they never feel like they've got enough time to do the things they probably know that they should do, to look after themselves better, and somehow they don't get round to it. And I really want to encourage people to see this as part of their daily self-care, because if they eat really well, then they're going to feel more revitalized, they'll have more vitality, they'll have greater focus, and actually they're probably going to be more productive in their busy days, rather than rushing and grabbing and never really sitting for long enough to even let that food digest. So I'd really like to talk about that, and how people can introduce things that are easy into their diet to support their gut health.
What are some practical things you can share right now with people that they can implement right away, so they can improve their gut health, they can improve their overall health? and just feel with more energy and vitality in their life?
So firstly, keep hydrated. So drink plenty of water. Always have a water bottle with you so you can sip throughout the day. Don't feel like you've got to down a pint of water or a litre of water in one go, because that's not very pleasant for most people. But just sipping throughout the day and staying hydrated. I would say if you're a breakfast eater, then start the day with a protein breakfast rather than a sweet breakfast. So if you're a toast and jam person, I would try and switch that up and have, say, for example, some eggs on some traditional sourdough, maybe a little bit of greens on the side, whatever that might be, or some mushrooms or tomatoes. That's a great start to your day. It's giving you protein that's going to keep you satiated for longer. If you're out and about for lunch, then I would go for a salad bowl over a sandwich. And in the evening, when you come home, think about your main meal being predominantly half the plate, fresh vegetables, and then whatever you want to accompany that with, just maybe a little bit less if at the moment your plate is dominated by the protein or the carbs. Reduce that down and increase your vegetables, because the easiest thing you could do is get more vegetables and fruit into your daily diet.
Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing this, and also thank you for being on this podcast. I know that you just released a new program, and can you share a little bit about that?
So I wanted to have a program that was almost like a mini introduction into looking after your gut health, but actually that would then lead into ongoing long-term changes. So I've got at the moment running a mini 21-day gut reset, and the people on the course are basically learning lots of ways to eat and integrate gut healthy habits into their daily diets. It's not just about what they eat, it's lots of other things as well. And I'm going to be running that sort of 2 or 3 times a year alongside the full gut reset. So the full gut reset is an intense 21-day program that can be done at any time. People just need to come and contact me, and we do the questionnaire that I mentioned beforehand just to check that they're actually at a stage where they could do it, because sometimes people come in such a state, I kind of need to build them up a little bit first. And so I'm running both of those, and yeah, I'm really excited about the online one because I started that only a few days ago, and so far the feedback from the cohort has been very positive.
That sounds so exciting. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Really easy. My website is emmaskilton.com, and on there you can contact me directly. You can also look, there's a couple of free downloads. So there's a PDF of sugar-free recipes for breakfast, snacks and lunch ideas, and also the lifestyle analysis. You can download and do that and send that back to me and book in a free 20-minute summary, and I'll discuss with you what that's showing and ways that you could improve your overall well-being.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being part of this podcast, and also for being part of the summit that we're organizing in November. For everybody that doesn't know, we are organizing a Superhuman Summit in November, from 11th of November to 14th of November. And Emma will be a speaker there, and she will share and dive deeper into this topic of how to eat healthy to optimize your health in any direction of your being. So when you're optimizing your health, you're actually releasing a lot more energy and potential and vitality from your body. When you release this potential from your body, then you can live and feel like a superhuman. So everything that we talked today is just a tiny glimpse of the real superpower that your body has. And we're going to reveal that superpower on 13th of November, on the Day of the Body, on the Superhuman Summit. As I said at the beginning of this podcast, it's a 4-day virtual event. We start with the spirit, then the mind, then the body, then the heart. Each day is focused on one of these 4 fundamental pillars, and in each of these 4 fundamental pillars, there is a hidden superpower that we're aiming to uncover, help you embrace it and harness it, so you can live a more superhuman existence of life. If you want to grab your tickets, you can go to the link in the description or go to lifecoachcode.com/superhuman summit, and you can get them for the less of the price of one meal. So for the price that's less than one meal, you get 4 days of transformation, over 25 coaches, over 12 workshops, panels, a place to network with like-minded individuals, and a lot of free gifts that will come from the coaches themselves, like ebooks, free programs, one-on-one sessions. So this is a no-brainer. If you want to get the tickets, just go to the link in the description, grab your tickets today, or go to lifecoachcode.com/superhuman summit, and I'm waiting for you there. We're super excited for the summit. We are organizing it, but I'm the one that's most excited because I know the people who will speak on the summit, and I know the topics they're going to speak about. I know that how handpicked these experts are, and I know that the topics we carefully selected and put in the right order so you get the right information. Everything on this summit is information that you cannot find anywhere else on the internet. It's exclusive for the summit. So get your tickets today and become part of the Superhuman Summit 2023. This is not a transformational summit. This is a transformational journey. So get your tickets today. And thank you, Emma, for being here on this podcast. I loved our conversation. Now, do you have anything to add for the end?
I'm just really excited, just like you are, for the summit. I can't wait to meet everybody and welcome all the participants in those 4 days. It's going to be amazing.
Thank you so much. So again, get your tickets if you want to be part of this summit. If not, you're going to miss out on a big event, but I think you're smarter than that. So, because I know I will not want to miss this. So thank you again for listening to this episode, and see you in the next one.